It's time for 515 Fantasy Football.
I know football. Are you ready for some football?
Domination on Sundays begins with listening to these guys on Thursdays.
You ready for this?
Over 40 years of fantasy football experience between them.
Yeah!
One is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps, husband and father, entering his 18th year of fantasy competition. Brian Eikenberry. The other, also a proud husband and father, is one of the winningest fantasy minds in the state. Celebrating 24 years of excellence. Andy Hall.
Let's get the game on!
It's showtime. The 515 Fantasy Football Show with your hosts, Andy Hall and Brian Eikenberry.
The arrival of the month of December means playoff time in the fantasy world. Time to start the guys that got you there. Time to stop overthinking that lineup of yours and put the best you've got out there. This is not the time to get cute or to screw with the oh-so-delicate chemistry that has gotten you to this point. For the vast majority of you, this week is the final week of the regular season. Many of you playoff bound. Congratulations. Some have an opportunity to improve your seeding this week, and some are on the bubble, needing a win desperately this week to get in. And remember, everyone's back to zero once the playoffs roll around. No matter your situation, we're here to help get you there. Andy Hall, joined as always by Brian Eikenberry. Is there anything more exciting than December in fantasy football?
No, there's not, and you hit the nail on the head. You got to start your studs right now. There's no more tinkering while you're on the john with your phone and thinking things through. Start your studs.
No matter how you found us, iTunes, Stitcher, ESPNDesMoines.com, or from our contributions to the SleeperBot app, we thank you for checking us out. Invite you to like us on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football. We're also on Twitter, at 515 Fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He is at IkeFFB. That's IKEFFB. Remember our promise to you. You take time to reach out and communicate with us. We answer back. Never will we abandon you. Never will we ignore you. It's the least we can do as a token of our appreciation that you're here.
I agree. We love it when you interact, and that's really the whole point. We do this show for you, to help you, to guide you, and most importantly, just have fun.
As always, a ton of material to present to you. We've done all the homework so you don't have to. In-depth breakdowns of all the matchups, grades on all the fantasy-relevant players, statistical reasoning behind those grades, the pop quiz answering 3 of fantasy's toughest questions, bargain bin picks from both of us, the flea flicker, and much more over the course of this show. But we begin, as we always do, with some headlines of fantasy note. Beginning in New England, Patriots tight end Rob Gronkowski suffered a back injury on Sunday. This one not considered serious. He should be active and play this weekend, but kind of a scary moment watching him walk off the field again.
Yeah, I rolled the dice pretty hard. Got lucky it didn't affect me, but it's just another injury for Gronk, and it begs the question, is it worth it anymore?
I would agree. Not just him either. How about people like Redskins tight end Jordan Reed?
Yeah.
Unlikely to play this week with a shoulder separation. I gotta love the fact that this guy left the field with a shoulder separation. It was a high-degree shoulder separation, so obviously it had to have been painful. Then he comes back out and scores 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, well, hey, modern chemistry helps you get through the pain.
At least temporarily. Browns head coach Hugh Jackson said Monday that tight end Gary Barnage's snaps were limited Sunday because he, quote, tweaked a knee. The Browns are on a bye this week, so I don't have to worry about that. Quarterback Cody Kessler has been cleared of the league's concussion protocol, returned to practice Monday. The team believes RG3 will be back under center before the end of the season. Give me a % chance you think RG3 will start for the Browns before this season's out.
They're probably going to give him the last game of the season to kind of put him out there and publicly show the world what he has left so they can cut bait with his contract.
Yeah, I'm thinking so too. That's exactly it. Sort of a tryout for everybody else.
Let's let a team see their future backup.
Broncos quarterback Trevor Siemian is in a walking boot, did not practice Wednesday. Could it be Paxton Lynch time once again in Denver? Could be.
It could be. Elway's ready to go. He made the call.
Chargers head coach Mike McCoy assured the media that wide receiver Tyrell Williams is good despite suffering a shoulder injury on Sunday. He has yet to practice this week, which is a concern. According to his brother David, Raiders quarterback Derek Carr is dealing with not one but 2 dislocations in his finger. He will play this weekend, however.
That was wicked watching that. Have you ever dislocated a finger on a snap?
I've never seen that happen before.
It was wicked
I'll
gross.
watch that 150 times before I watch Theismann again. I don't want to see broken legs ever again in my life. Speaking of dislocated fingers, Cardinals running back David Johnson expected to be okay after Sunday's injury. Cardinals wide receiver John Brown left Sunday's game with a hamstring injury, did not return. He's got with this sickle cell trait, which I'm hearing a lot more this year, and I've never really heard before. I don't know if this is a new thing or what, but
yeah, it's just one of those things that it's not something that's commonly talked about, but when it does flare up, it obviously creates an issue, especially for the high altitudes and stuff.
Saints wide receiver Brandon Cooks has, quote, growing frustration with his role in the offense. Sounds like squeaky wheel. Eagles wide receiver Jordan Matthews has a sprained ankle, but is expected to play this weekend. Texans head coach Bill O'Brien expects running back Lamar Miller to be, quote, fine after he limped off the field with an ankle injury during Sunday's loss. He was limited in practice yesterday. Jets head coach Todd Bowles confirmed Monday that Ryan Fitzpatrick would be the team's starting quarterback Week 13 against the Colts. Bengals wide receiver A.J. Green's status for Week 13 is still up in the air, according to head coach Marvin Lewis. I don't expect to see A.J. Green back just yet.
No way, not a chance.
Chiefs wide receiver Jeremy Maclin back at practice as of yesterday. Colts head coach Chuck Pagano optimistic that T.Y. Hilton will be able to play next Monday versus the Jets. And he's also saying the same of Andrew Luck, who has yet to officially pass the league's concussion protocol.
That's the thing. If you're heading into the weekend and on Friday he hasn't been cleared, you need to pick up a quarterback quickly because you can't wait it out till Monday night.
I do have a sneaking suspicion he'll be fine, but this is just me spitballing on a Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a playoff spot and you need to win game and Luck's your quarterback, you might need to pick up a backup real quick.
You listening, Julie?
Whoops.
Dolphins wide receiver Devontae Parker is day-to-day with a back injury. I hate throwing inside jokes into the show. This is a national show, but, Brian and I do compete in a league together, and there is a young lady named Julie who does own Andrew Luck and should probably look at some other options this week. Just saying. Bills wide receiver Sammy Watkins did not practice Wednesday. He's got some soreness in his foot. I'm going to go ahead and guess that this is a pretty serious deal, actually.
Yeah, gee, I wonder why.
And he was the one that came out and said he wasn't going to play until he's 100%. He obviously wasn't 100%, and he played last week. And now he's dealing with this quote-unquote soreness, and I think it's a lot more than just soreness. I think Sammy Watkins, if they're smart, they shut him down for the season.
Shouldn't have brought him back in the first place. You have no chance, no business. Why push it?
We thought last week, hey, he's going to be in the lineup. He must be 100%. So we were both advocating in the pop quiz that you should go pick him up if he's available. But, this soreness thing, man, I'm telling you, people aren't making a big deal of this yet, but they should be.
It's a pre-existing condition.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty sizable deal here. So, Panthers wide receiver Kelvin Benjamin sat out of practice on Wednesday. He's got a little shoulder ailment, but I think he'll play this weekend. Jags wide receiver Allen Hurns injured his hamstring on a touchdown on Sunday. He may miss this week's game. Did you see that play, by the way?
No.
I haven't seen Allen Hurns in the end zone for quite some time, so I was paying attention when this happened, and it was a really sweet play. He went completely sideways, like Reggie Bush style, diving across the pylon, and he tweaked his hamstring doing it. So
I refuse to watch any of his stuff after I had to cut him from my roster.
Yeah, I still own him in a couple of places, but I'm quickly looking for opportunities to bail on those contracts in dynasty leagues because Allen Hurns has clearly been surpassed by Marquise Lee as the number 2.
Oh, absolutely. We called that one about 8 weeks ago.
That is correct. We did. Both Jags running backs, by the way, sat out of practice Wednesday. Chris Ivory has a hamstring issue, and TJ Yeldon an ankle. Both are questionable this week. What do the Jags do if neither can play, Brian?
Just accept the loss and move on.
Really? Well, I was going to say Denard Robinson, who's actually
the offensive weapon.
He has gotten some carries. Shoelace, isn't that what they call him?
I have no idea.
I think his nickname is Shoelace. But anyway, I don't even know why I know that. I'll have to look that up because I think that's true. But anyway, if it is Denard Robinson, kind of exciting. I like watching that guy play. He's done some pretty electric things with the football.
The first year.
Yeah, well, I think even last year he was a pickup, wasn't he? I'll have to go back
Maybe.
and look. Giants running back Shane Vereen returned to practice Wednesday. He's eligible to be taken off that IR designated to return list. Shane Vereen, could he be a contributor down the stretch for the Giants? That's a great question. And you're not ready to answer it, apparently.
No, I was just going to say Denard Robinson at the age of 10 played football with his shoes untied, thus earning the name Shoelace.
I was correct.
You were correct.
Somewhere I picked these things up, and I don't even know. Falcons shut down corner Desmond Trufant out for the rest of the season with a torn pectoral muscle. That Falcons defense is falling apart.
Quickly.
I mean, he was one of the last beacons of hope on that defense, and along with Adrian Claiborne, who's also out.
Are they
the
going
season,
to give the division to the Buccaneers?
Well, they're playing lights out football, those
Yeah,
Bucs.
and the Lions in first place. So, I mean, there's two. Whoa.
Back in a bit, we'll start with the matchups in Thursday Night Football. We'll break it down for you next on the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show, heard weekly on 1350 AM ESPN Radio in Des Moines, Iowa. You can also get the show on iTunes, on Stitcher, and online at espndesmoines.com. A lot of places to find us. We're also on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football. We're on Twitter at 515 Fantasy. I'm Andy Hall. That's Brian Eichenberry. Diving right into the Week 13 matchups, beginning with our Thursday night matchup. Boy, am I looking forward to this one. Dallas at Minnesota. Begin with the Cowboys and quarterback Dak Prescott. I'm giving him a B-. Dak has been unstoppable this season. He has thrown for multiple touchdowns in 9 straight games, but tonight gets a Vikings defense that hasn't allowed any quarterback they've faced more than 2 passing scores this season in any one game. Something's got to give, right? The way I see this going, the Cowboys lean heavily on Ezekiel Elliott, which will mean less attempts and yards for Prescott, a lower scoring potential than the usual. Proceed with caution as far as Prescott goes. Speaking of Elliott, a B+ this week. Minnesota's run-stuffing unit has regressed considerably since earlier this season. They're allowing over 100 yards per game on the ground, and while they don't give up a lot of running back scores, Elliott has proven himself to be matchup-proof, a good bet to reach the end zone regardless of opponent. Des Bryant, I'm giving a B- to. Likely locks up against Vikings stud quarter Xavier Rhodes this week, which has not been a fruitful matchup for many wide receivers this season. Over the past 3 weeks, no number 1 wide receiver has topped 77 yards against him. Only Jamison Crowder of the Redskins scored on him. Bryant is a bona fide stud, so you're definitely not sitting him, but it would be wise to temper expectations a bit here, considering the tough matchup. Cole Beasley, a C+. Speedy slot types have had a decent amount of success against the Vikings this season, including Anquan Bolden, Larry Fitzgerald, and the aforementioned Jamison Crowder. They've all topped 77 yards and or scored on the Vikings over the past month. He'll probably see a lot of Captain Munnerlyn, who's been solid this year but not unbeatable. Beasley is in play as a flex this week. Terrence Williams, though, I'm leaving on the bench. Far too boomer bust to count on this late in the season. Jason Witten, a B grade. This is the kind of matchup Jason Witten was made for. While the Elliott's, Bryants, Beasleys, and Williams keep the Vikings secondary guessing, Witten should find himself running up against primarily linebackers. Traditionally, that's a matchup Witten has thrived. In 5 prior meetings against Minnesota dating back to 2004, he's averaged nearly 7 receptions per game for 71 yards, and he did score in the team's last meeting in 2013. Over to the Vikings, and quarterback Sam Bradford, a C+, has faced the Cowboys 3 times, all of them as a member of the Eagles. But in all 3 games, he turned in decent numbers, averaging 253 passing yards per game and a touchdown through the air. That sounds about right against a banged-up Dallas secondary that allows 280 yards passing per game and roughly 2 passing scores. They also have collected the second least number of INTs, only 4 on the season. So I'm not too concerned about Bradford turning the ball over, at least not through the air. Running back Jerick McKinnon, I'll give a C grade too. The Cowboys are among the league's elite run-stuffing defenses. They rank 3rd in yards allowed to opposing runners and have given up only 5 rushing scores on the season. There's not much to like about any of the Vikes running backs this week, including Matt Asiata. He's also getting a C. You're once again here with Asiata banking on a touchdown plunge from him in a tough matchup. Had a feeling he'd get one last week, and he did. So I made him my bargain bin pick, and that looked pretty good after that touchdown. Not so much, though, this week. I'm staying away. Stephon Diggs. What to do with Stephon Diggs? I'm giving him an A grade, assuming he plays, provided he's ready for action tonight. He's a great play against the Cowboys secondary. that doesn't have the athletes to be able to hang with Diggs' speed and shiftiness. He's definitely the go-to guy in this offense. Adam Thielen, a C+, has some flex potential in a game that figures to feature a lot of passing, at least on the Minnesota side. Cordero Patterson, a desperation play. I'll give him a C, I guess. His success hinges on his contributions as a runner, including kick returns. Otherwise, generally not much to see here, even in a great matchup. Kyle Rudolph gets a B grade. Dallas is a tight end-friendly defense. They rank 9th in fantasy points per game allowed to the position, nearly 9 per game. Rudolph should be heavily involved in this one, as Bradford and the Vikings coaching staff seem to prefer he stick with short, high-percentage passes to route runners like Rudolph, who has a decent chance of scoring in this matchup.
All right, the Chiefs-Falcons here. Quarterback Alex Smith, he's going to get a B. Falcons had the worst pass defense, and it's even worse now, including the injuries. So I think that's going to give Alex Smith a real chance to put up some good fantasy football numbers. He will need Macklin back to get that good boost, but he shouldn't have too much of an issue with his current targets. Running back Spencer Ware, he's also going to get a B. Owners may have been disappointed lately with his production, and it could be worse as the Falcons give up just under 100 per game. This may be a week to leave him on the bench if you have other options. I see most of Ware's production coming in the passing game. He still has 1,000 yards from scrimmage, but only 3 touchdowns in 10 games. Wide receiver Jeremy Macklin, he's going to get a B-, still listed as questionable with that groin that he's been dealing with for the last 4 weeks. Would be one of the best weeks to play him if he does indeed see the field this Sunday. Wide receiver Tyreek Hill's going to get a B+, someone who is filling in nicely in the lineup. He's always showing that he can outperform him with his little breakaway speed there. Sleeper of sorts, but if you listen here, not so much. I think he is the big star of the matchup. Wide receiver Chris Conley is going to get a C. He only has 380 this late in the season. Isn't worth much attention. Tight end Travis Kelce, though, for me is B+. Kelce is in line for some touchdown work this week. He only has 3, but is a viable option with 57 reception and nice in your PPR slot there, especially with the Atlanta pass defense falling even further. On the Falcons side of the ball, quarterback Matt Ryan, he's going to get a B here as well. Chiefs give up 260 through the air, and, there's Julio, so something to look forward to. Chiefs had that bend, don't break mentality, so yards equal points. His boost in the numbers recently has been from the progressions going to other receivers not named Julio. He still does have 26 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, so he's not costing you hardly any points. Running back Devonta Freeman's going to get a B+, and Tevin Coleman's going to get a B. Good matchup here is the Chiefs allow a ton of yards on the ground, 132 to be exact. It's surprising on how their defense scores at this point, but hey, you know what? It's all about, again, yards, which the Chiefs tend to give up plenty of. Both Freeman and Coleman are tied in total touchdowns with 7. Freeman has a clear edge in receptions and yardage. Both should have a decent day. I give the hat tip to Freeman as he has 11 games under his belt versus Coleman's 8. Julio Jones is going to get a B+. Focal point. He's going to be the focal point of the defense, but he still is averaging 17.5 yards per catch, over 1,100 yards, and he's Julio Jones. You can't shut him down too much. Mohamed Sanu is going to get a C. This guy can't get you a break. Just when you think he's going to have a decent game, he is passed by somebody else on the depth chart that we weren't seeing, mainly Taylor Gabriel. He's
Former Brown.
Yeah, wow. C+. This guy's really sneaky, but will it last? First 7 games, he had less than 100, and now he's averaging 70 yards and a touchdown per game over his last 4. The tight end slot for the Falcons, you've got this guy Hooper, you've got this guy Tolo Lolio. Yeah, don't even think about it. Go somewhere else.
Another fun matchup for me, Detroit at New Orleans. First, Brian's Lions, quarterback Matthew Stafford, an A grade. The Saints are awful on the defensive side of the ball, particularly against the pass, and Stafford has lit them up in his five prior matchups against them dating back to 2009. He's averaging 309 yards per game, roughly 2 passing scores. We'll take that. Theo Riddick, a B+. Riddick, like Devonta Freeman last year, is kind of that dual threat guy that is a virtual lock for at least 100 combo yards and or a score in any game he's healthy enough to play. Rarely, though, do you get both. The Saints have allowed the 5th most rushing yards to opposing backs, the 4th most receiving yards to opposing backs this season. It's a great start for Riddick. He's a solid running back, too, in this matchup. Golden Tate, a B grade, 16 receptions, 199 yards, and 3 touchdowns in the last 2 matchups where he's faced the Saints. There's plenty to like here, despite the fact that the Saints have improved dramatically in pass defense as of late, thanks to Sterling Moore and B.W. Webb. In the last 7 games, only 1 receiver has topped 100 yards against New Orleans, and they're allowing an average of only about 1 receiving touchdown per game over that stretch, which might sound surprising, but we checked. The numbers are there. They pan out. Marvin Jones, I'll give him a C+. He saw double-digit targets last week for the first time since week 2, including a couple downfield shots that didn't pan out. Is in line for, at the very least, flex consideration this week against a Saints secondary that has had issues stopping downfield throws. Was he just the ultimate sell high?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, my God.
Was.
I mean,
Absolutely.
for those of you that sold high following that 200-yard performance against Green Bay earlier this year, I mean, you hit the jackpot.
Beautiful.
You got whoever you wanted for him at that point. Anquan Bolden, I'll give him a C grade. He scored in his last 2 head-to-head matchups against New Orleans, the last a 6-catch, 95-yard performance as a member of the Niners in October of 2014. In 2016, however, he's very boomer bust in terms of target share and scoring opportunities. Eric Ebron, a B+. The Saints have given up 8 scores to opposing tight ends this season, allow the 3rd most fantasy production to the position. Ebron is a great start despite being absolutely invisible last week. Over to the Saints, Drew Brees, A grade. In 6 games against the Lions dating back to 2008, Brees has averaged an incredible 367 passing yards and over 3 passing touchdowns per contest. That is an easy A right there. Mark Ingram, a B grade. I hope you enjoyed the fruits of last week's explosion, because I think the Saints returned to a traditional pass-heavy approach against the Lions this week, and Ingram he's been a beast since his Week 8 benching, averaging over 8 yards per carry, scoring 4 touchdowns. I'm not sure it's going to be lights out in this one, but I do like him enough to start him. Tim Hightower, a C+. He gets some opportunities in the passing game, a few runs as well, but seems to have been surpassed by Ingram here in the last couple of weeks, even though technically he's getting more field time and more touches as evidenced in Week 12. It just feels like Ingram has been the better runner there. Brandon Cooks, an A grade. The squeaky wheel most definitely will get some grease this weekend. That's just a gut feeling I've got. Michael Thomas, a B+, with the assumption that there will be plenty to go around. Thomas and Cooks look to be the 2 primary benefactors of a high-volume passing attack against these Lions. Willie Snead, a B grade. Even Slick Willie should be plenty involved in this one. Strong flex play. Kobe Fleener, a C grade. The Lions are the 3rd most friendly defense against opposing tight ends on the season, but I'm officially worried about Kobe Fleener, Brian. Did you know he was outsnapped 58-18 in Week 12 by the Saints' other tight end, Josh Hill?
Wow.
58-18. Hill, who, by the way, caught all 6 of his targets for 74 yards. If this is turning into a true timeshare, which I think it might be, I'm fading both guys. C+ grades for both. Josh Hill he is involved this week. Josh Hill, out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. That you better learn the playbook.
Yeah. Well, that was an exciting first segment of matchups, was it not? You know what that means. It's only going to get worse from here.
It's only going to get worse.
Beginning with our breakdown of such barn burners as the LA Rams and the New England Patriots, the Houston Texans, the Green Bay Packers, and the Denver Broncos and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Those are your next 3 matchups we're breaking down for you. And they're coming next. Hey, believe me, there's still plenty of good stuff still to come on this week's edition of the 515 Fantasy Football Show. And as always, you're hearing it on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. You are listening to the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa, each and every Thursday between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. We're also on iTunes, on Stitcher, and online at espndesmoines.com. Brian and I also contribute on a weekly basis to the SleeperBot app, which if you haven't downloaded yet, you should.
If you haven't downloaded yet, you're probably losing.
That's probably true because, your league mates are listening to us, and they realize, what a value that is to get all the information before everybody else. I mean, that's the power in the SleeperBot app, really.
100%.
But we do the start-sit thing on Sunday mornings prior to kickoffs, and we add some analysis to some fantasy alerts and all kinds of fun stuff. Back into the matchups, though, for Week 13. Brian, you got the Rams and the Patriots.
Yeah, Rams Pats. Now, one could get super excited and start Goff, but that is likely your final game or two in your playoff push, and I'm not taking the bait. It's a road game in New England against Tom Brady. It has to be pretty intimidating for a rookie QB who's only played 2 games thus far of the season. And the Patriots are middle-of-the-road defense. Goff did have those 3 touchdowns last week, so maybe a stash at this point, C+. Running back Todd Gurley, he's going to get a B. Gurley is now averaging 3.4 yards per carry, just down, and only 4 touchdowns. Pretty big disappointment. But teams are making the quarterback in Los Angeles beat them, and I expect New England to do the same. They're just going to stack the box and make Goff try to beat them or make Goff outshoot Tom Brady, which is not going to happen. So it's the typical story with the receivers here. Britt Austin Marquez, B-, C+, and a C. Same story, just don't get too sucked up into last week's situation with Goff's 3 touchdowns. I don't think that happens again this week. That was really just, if you watch that game, it was just bang, bang, 2 touchdowns right out of the gate. Nobody even seen it coming. It was a couple of broken plays. So it wasn't like this was great scheming and it was awesome quarterback play. I think it was just accident. New England does give up 250 through the air, but if I had to make a safe pick, I'm going to start one pass catcher named Lance Kendricks with a B+. He had 50 and a touchdown. I would expect him to do the same thing this week. He is Goff's safety outlet that we called last week and said if he's in trouble, it's going to go to Kendricks. He's going to get some action. 7 targets a game since Goff has been the quarterback. So if you're betting on targets, Kendricks is the option. On the Patriots side of the ball, Tom Brady, obviously, he's always matchup proof. We don't care. We always start Tom Brady. He did miss practice on Wednesday, but every veteran does. Friday walkthroughs are way more important now than practice. Running back LeGarrette Blount, he's going to get a B-. He's taken a pretty big hit in recent weeks, but still managed 67 yards. Nothing he's able to do since Deion Lewis is back. There's no touchdowns for him. There's nothing really going on. Is this trouble? No, not yet. The game flow has always been the issue. Pats aren't blowing the doors off of anybody right now, but this is the game they do. So I think Blount is going to have a big game. Deion Lewis is going to get a B. He's taken away more reps and targets away from White. He's been increasing week over week, so expect him to do the same again. Pass catchers here. Edelman's going to get a B-. Amendola is going to get a C. Hogan's also going to get a B-. All 3 of these receivers are pretty iffy if Lewis and White are both playing as they have been. If you take out the 12 to 15 targets that Lewis and White combine for, that's 12 to 15 targets receivers aren't getting. So that really affects the wide receiver play here in New England right now with Deion Lewis and White back there. So I'm not starting any New England wide receiver. The stats just aren't there. They're giving up too many passes to running backs.
What about my boy Malcolm Mitchell?
No.
Not even him, huh?
No.
Okay.
Nope. Sorry.
You didn't even mention him.
You
hate him.
Rob Gronkowski, I will, though. It's an A. That whole injury thing, he's stretched out, landed flat on his back, got a boo-boo. Nothing to do with his lung, so put him back in there. He averages 21 yards per catch, and he's Tom Brady's favorite target.
Denver at Jacksonville, start with the Broncos. Trevor Siemian, he's on the bench. He might not even play this week, and if it is Paxton Lynch, I'm not starting him either. Devontae Booker, a B grade. He played 46 snaps to Capri Bibbs 30 last week, outtouched him 25-9. Remains the bell cow for a matchup against an exploitable Jags front 7 that has given up the 24th most yardage to opposing backs. A total of 13 rushing touchdowns on the season. Not an A grade because he's only averaging 3.7 yards per carry. He's only reached the end zone twice thus far. Capri Bibbs, I'm leaving him on the bench. Demaryius Thomas, a C grade. If the Jags typically allow 1 touchdown per game through the air, it's anyone's guess as to which of the Broncos pass catchers will come down with it. Thomas has hit pay dirt a total of 5 times this season, averaging about 5.5 receptions per week and 67 yards per game. Emmanuel Sanders also getting a C grade. By comparison, Sanders has scored 4 touchdowns on the season, averaging just over 5.5 receptions per week and 75.5 yards per game. He grabbed his first touchdown since week 4 in last week's loss to Kansas City. The tight end is A.J. Derby. I'm going to leave him on the bench, though. Seems to have surpassed Virgil Green as the team's primary pass-catching tight end, but isn't seeing the volume you want to see out of your starter, and this week's matchup is pretty awful as well. The Jags rank 7th in the league against opposing tight ends. Over to the Jags, Blake Bortles, a bench grade. Against the league's best pass defense, I'm finding another option. Chris Ivory, a C+. Denver allows 120 yards per game to opposing runners, has given up 10 rushing touchdowns on the season, Ivory, if the Jags refuse to bail on the running game, should see enough volume here to make him a worthwhile flex option. Again, if he plays. Remember, he did not practice yesterday. Only played 15 snaps in Week 12 loss at Buffalo, which was good for third on the team, which is alarming. Denard Robinson, I made mention of earlier. I'd give him a C grade here. Led the team in snaps and touches last week, but did virtually nothing with the opportunities. Ivory and Yeldon both banged up. Could be the Robinson show this week. Who knows? Speaking of Yeldon, I'm keeping him on the bench. Allen Robinson, the only pass catcher of the Jags I'm giving a grade to, and it's a barely startable grade of C in what will be an incredibly difficult matchup. He's a flex at best, and that mostly is based on name recognition. So no Marquise Lee, no Allen Hurns, no Julius Thomas, just no on the Jags.
So no.
I wrapped that up with a bow in about 2.5 minutes.
Bam. Well, we're going to do the Texans at the Green Bay Packers. Quarterback Brock Osweiler is going to get a C+. He's bad, let's face it. Packers are 21st in passing, but Brock is Brock. He has 12 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, so buyer beware. Running back Lamar Miller, B-. His ankle's still an issue, but he's going to have to go because all of the Texans running backs are on the injury report. He has over 1,000 combined yards and 4 touchdowns. Wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins is going to get a B here. No point in reopening old wounds. His quarterback play, a little bit of him. He hasn't had over 71 yards since week 2 and only has 1 touchdown in 7 games. I'm not saying bench, but depends on what you got, pal.
That's tough.
Will Fuller, B-. Same story. He was the early hero of fantasy football that came crashing down to earth on week number 3 and hasn't scored more than 8 points in fantasy football since week 4.
Thanks, Obama.
Whoops. Tight end, Jalen Strong is going to get a C. Not even.
Nah, bench grade. No way. Nobody's even heard of that guy.
Exactly. Tight end CJ Fedorowicz. He has 21 targets in his last 3 games. Kind of an emergency out at this point. Hasn't scored in 3 weeks. So even he's a plug and pray at best. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers is going to get a B+. Mission critical for the Packers. Long shot in the division, but they need a W to remain in the sniffing distance of the Lions. Texans are 5th against the pass, but the Packers at home will be go Pack go or no Pack no.
Do you want my official prediction on that?
Yeah.
I think that the Packers will ultimately come out the much better team in that matchup. I think that
just on quarterback alone.
I'm not worried at all about the pass catchers, particularly Jordy Nelson and Devontae Adams.
Yeah. So Rodgers 27-7 touchdown interception ratio. James Starks B-, 270 yards combined. He's a no start for me. It may be the Christine Michaels show. You think he's ready to go?
Yeah, we were thinking that maybe last week too, but then Starks came out and played pretty much every snap. So.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen. So Christine Michael, we're not even giving him a grade because who knows? Jordy Nelson's going to get a B. Technically the number 1 receiver with 754, 9 touchdowns and 61 reception. He's doing fine. He's Rodgers' thunder blanket, so an easy start there. Randall Cobb, C. Cobb, who's Cobb? I don't know. I never heard of the guy before.
Yeah, with the emergence of Devontae Adams, Cobb is pretty much a forgotten man.
We were
now.
A year early on Devontae Adams. I think everybody was.
We all were.
Yeah, Adams is an A. He's averaging over 100 yards per game over his last 3 and 2 touchdowns, so he's the way to go. Clearly earned the trust of Rodgers, and he was just rushed into his role last year. Wasn't ready. Tight end Jared Cook, he's going to get a C. Came off a huge game 2 weeks ago and then threw up a 7-yard disappointment last week. When Devontae Adams has a big game, Jared Cook has nothing. And when Devontae Adams has a bad game, Jared Cook gets it all.
You know what's intriguing about these Packers, and I think I figured this out now. Cobb was never meant to be a number 1. So when Jordy Nelson went down last season, everybody expected Cobb to just become the de facto number 1. He is not a number 1 wide receiver. Devontae Adams is not meant to be a number 1 wide receiver either. And I think that's, one of the reasons why he failed in that role last year, because they did try him for a while too. And I think the fantasy community, like you said, was a year ahead on Devontae Adams for sure. But now that he's here, I'm not betting against him. It doesn't matter who covers him. It could be A.J. Bouye, who, by the way, is Pro Football Focus's number 1 rated corner in the league. He plays for the Texans. I don't care. It's Rodgers, it's Adams, it's Rodgers, it's Jordy. That running game, they don't even need it. you might as well stick Ty Montgomery back there again. That's what I think.
Why are you wasting your money on signing Christine Michael?
I mean, Starks is so pedestrian.
You could sign Brian Eikenberry.
You could
for
sign,
cheaper.
that would be amazing. Stick around. Another set of matchups still to come as the Week 13 show continues. The 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM, ESPN Radio. The 515 Fantasy Football Show heard each and every Thursday between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. on 1350 AM, ESPN Radio in Des Moines, Iowa. Also get the show on iTunes, on Stitcher, and online at espndesmoines.com. I'm Andy Hall. That's Brian Eikenberry. Back into the Week 13 matchups. Philadelphia, Cincinnati. Start with the Eagles. Quarterback Carson Wentz, a B-. He's facing a Bengals team that ranks just outside the top 12 in yards allowed via the air, about 246 per game. They've been trending up as of late, where the rookie out of North Dakota State is kind of trending down following a tough outing against the Packers last Monday night. Cincy has given up 20 passing scores on the year, though, so it's not all potentially bad news for Wentz. Darren Sproles, a B grade. Teams love to run the ball on Cincy. The Bengals allow 4.4 yards per carry, but over 120 rushing yards total per game. That's good for 28th in the league, which isn't good. Of course, they've given up 8 rushing scores, which isn't terrible, but they do give up a ton of receptions and yards to pass-catching backs like Sproles. Wendell Smallwood, a C grade, was not overly impressive last Monday against the Packers, but that has happened to lots of running backs this season. Let's slow the hype train a bit. Let's see what he can do against a below-average run defense this week. Jordan Matthews, questionable with that ankle injury. If he plays, though, this is a great start. You know?
You think so?
Oh, I think Cincinnati, I think they're pretty terrible in the secondary. I mentioned when I was talking about Wentz, they've improved a bit, but that's against passers. Against receivers, they're giving up plenty of production, and Jordan Matthews is still the go-to guy in that offense. No question about it.
I guess.
Dorial Green-Beckham, I'm going to give a B- to. If Matthews is out, though, I bump him up to a B+. He figures to be the main benefactor of all those vacated targets. This guy's got some serious raw ability to turn in some impressive numbers when given ample opportunity against beatable defenses like Cincy's. Bryce Treggs, I'm just going to leave him on the bench, even though he's my boy. Zach Ertz, a B+. The Bengals are one of only 4 NFL teams allowing double-digit fantasy points to tight ends on a weekly basis. Ertz should have a monster day against a defense that allows nearly 70 yards receiving per game. A total of 6 touchdowns have been scored on the season by that position. Now over to the Bengals. Andy Dalton, a B-. A very similar prognosis for Dalton as I had for Wentz this week, as both defenses are virtual mirrors of each other as far as defending the pass goes. Philly pressures opposing quarterbacks better than the Bengals do, which leads me to believe Dalton will finish slightly lower than Wentz in final stats. Of course, missing A.J. Green for another week doesn't help. Jeremy Hill, a B grade. The Eagles are a middle-of-the-road run defense. Hill is a middle-of-the-road runner. It's the perfect matchup for a middle-of-the-road grade like B. Rex Burkhead, I'm going to leave on the bench. He's not worth a look yet, but could continue to see increased snaps and touches as the season progresses. As far as the pass catchers go, Tyler Boyd, a B-. Slot guys like Boyd have had some success against these Eagles. Doug Baldwin in Week 11, Taylor Gabriel Week 10, Roger Lewis in Week 9. Who? Roger Lewis, the Giants. Boyd finished second in team targets last week. He should have plenty of chances to touch the ball again in this game. Brandon LaFell, I'm leaving on the bench, the only player with any recent history against his opponent. LaFell did nothing against these Eagles last season as a member of the Patriots. Tyler Eifert, a B-. Philly is a brutal matchup for tight ends, but Eifert, by default really, is likely Dalton's top targeted pass catcher again here, as he has been since Green's injury.
All right, we're going to do the Dolphins-Ravens here. Quarterback Ryan Tannehill is going to get a C-. Baltimore proves over and over you should not be starting a QB against them. God, they could be so much better if Ravens actually had a quarterback. Tannehill averages 216 through the air. Ravens give up 220 in the air. It's not going to go good for Tannehill at all. Running back Jay Ajayi is going to get a B. He's cooled off recently with 200 and a touchdown in his last 3 combined. So this week's not going to be much better. Ravens give up 79 on the ground. I suggest shopping around for running back options if Ajayi is a must-start for you. Wide receiver Jarvis Landry is going to get a B-. Victim of the defense here. We're just going to go ahead and Kenny Stills is going to get a C+. Parker Carew is going to get a D here. Kind of run them in together. The victim of the defense QB situation. Please don't get caught up in starting any of these guys. They were a dice roll before. The Ravens are just too good on defense, so now it's way too risky. Someone's likely going to get free for a score here, but you have no idea which one of these guys it's going to be, so just move on. No tight end of options either here in Miami anymore. Out of the Ravens.
Wow, which team?
Whoa, jeez. The Ravens side of the ball. Quarterback Joe Flacco is going to get a B-. Dolphins are just sexy in pass coverage, 9th best. Flacco hasn't done anything, so it's going to be a tough go here as well. His numbers aren't much better than Osweiler's, to be honest. Flacco has 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, which is terrible. Running back Kenneth Dixon, I think he's going to get a B-. Getting more and more reps as the season moves on in the final stretch here, but he had 13 carries last week, so I expect it to bump up a little more. He's still scoreless. I think that ends this week.
I'll be talking about him a little later on in the show.
No, you can't because I go first.
No, seriously, you stole my guy.
Yeah.
All right, that's a little tease for later.
Wah.
We're going to fight over that one.
Running back Terrence West is going to get a C+. Since he is a starter and losing reps to Dixon.
Brian just got an email.
No, I didn't.
That wasn't you? That was me?
That was your
computer.
computer.
Cool, I got an email.
Yeah.
Right on.
You're fired.
Great.
Dolphins do give up 132 on the ground, so I expect a little bit of a timeshare here, but I think Dixon comes out on top. Wide receiver Mike Wallace is going to get a B. Primarily a decent option in the passing game. He just isn't what he used to be. Still averages 15.5 yards per catch. Only has the 4 touchdowns to go with that. Steve Smith, B+, the champ supposedly. But if you look into the numbers, Mike Wallace is still ahead of Steve Smith in yards, receptions, and touchdowns.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. Smith missed some time, too. So.
Yeah, he missed some time. 2 games, I think. But everyone's, Smith's a savior. Not really if you look into it, just because of Flacco. Dennis Pitta is the only tight end without a touchdown on the Ravens roster.
Yikes.
Which is yikes. So that's that.
San Francisco at Chicago. First the Niners and quarterback Colin Kaepernick, a B+. If you took my advice from several weeks ago, rostered him, and even played him where it made sense, like last week, I have wonderful news for you. You can keep him in your starting lineup this week, too, against a mediocre Bears defense that has suffered multiple injuries along the defensive front and in the secondary. Kaepernick won't blow you away with his passing numbers, but his ability to supplement that fantasy production on the ground makes him a nice low-end quarterback 1 this week. Carlos Hyde, a B grade. Assuming the Niners want to win this game, they'd be wise to feed Hyde this Sunday. The Bears give up on average nearly 104 yards per game to opposing backs and have surrendered a total of 9 rushing scores on the season. Hyde can also catch passes. Jeremy Curley, a B grade, is the likeliest of the Niners pass catchers to find open space and turn in a decent amount of fantasy production this week against a Bears secondary that allows, on average, 254 receiving yards per game to opposing pass catchers, and they've given up 17 touchdowns through the air this season. Curley caught 7 passes for 81 yards and a score in his lone head-to-head against Chicago as a member of the Jets back in 2014, so there is a bit of a track record there. Torrey Smith making an appearance.
Whoa.
C+. He made a surprise appearance last week. It's been a really disappointing season for him, but I have a sneaky feeling he may not disappear this week, as he's done so many times this season. Historically, he's fared very well against the Bears in 2 previous matchups, one as a member of the Niners last season, the other as a member of the Ravens back in 2013. He scored in both contests, catching a total of 7 passes for 108 yards. So there you go. Tight end Vance McDonald, a C grade. Been very quiet in his career against Chicago, a team that isn't terrible at keeping opposing tight ends from racking up big fantasy days. Over to the Bears, Matt Barkley, a B grade. The fantasy community is split down the middle when it comes to determining whether his Week 12 stats, 316 passing yards, 3 touchdown passes, and 2 INTs, is a trend or a mirage. I happen to be on the trend side, especially considering his pass catchers actually dropped several passes that should have been touchdowns. The Niners are an awful defense. If you're in desperation mode or a 2-quarterback league, Barkley is a serviceable option. Jordan Howard, a B+. As a general rule of thumb this season, if you have a running back going against San Francisco, you start him. The Niners give up over 5 yards per carry, nearly 172 rushing yards per game. A total of 14 rushing touchdowns have been scored on them this season. Howard is a great start this week, and I'm not touching any of the other Bears backs. Marquise Wilson, a B grade. So which of the misfit toys in that vaunted Bears passing game is the goods and which is fool's gold? I'm leaning on Wilson, and I'll talk more about him coming up a little later in the show. Cameron Meredith, a C+. Doesn't seem to have the chemistry that Wilson has with Barkley. Has the tools necessary, but I don't see him as a guy you'd want to place your trust in on such an important week. Any of the other pass catchers, I think I'm just going to leave on the bench. Maybe I'll give a slightly starting grade to Daniel Brown, the tight end. Intriguing option with several usual starting tight ends injured or on bye this week. The Niners are a middle of the road against the position, allowing an average of over 7 fantasy points to opposing tight ends. 4 targets, 3 receptions, 24 yards, and a touchdown in Brown's debut last week. Brian, halfway through. Got some more matchups to get to. The bargain bins, of course, and the flea flicker. But up next is everybody's favorite segment, yours included.
Pin the tail on the donkey.
Brian's going to go do that.
Yep.
I'm going to do the pop quiz.
That's what I do during commercials, by the way.
That's very creepy. Anyway, the pop quiz answering 3 of fantasy's toughest questions. We're going to throw them at Brian here shortly on the 515 Fantasy Football Show. Stick around. Hour number 2, Week 13 edition of the 515 Fantasy Football Show, heard each and every Thursday on ESPN Radio in Des Moines, Iowa. That's 1350 a.m. on the dial. You can also get us on iTunes, on Stitcher, and online at espndesmoines.com. Speaking of iTunes, Brian and I have been begging you for this all season long. A rate and review of our show. Thus far, I don't think anybody's taken advantage of this.
We have a couple of reviews early 2016 August timeframe, but you know what? We need you. We need you right now.
Selfishly, just to share with you, full disclosure, because I love to be honest, but I just want to be honest with you. This will help us in terms of visibility so more people can find the show. That's the goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not looking to make any money off of you or anything.
No, it goes out there so when people type in fantasy football or whatever, the more action, reviews, real things like that happen, the higher up we get bumped up there, and that's pretty cool, right?
It is pretty cool. I mean, I'd like to think we're on par, if not better, than a lot of these quote-unquote experts in terms of our intel and the research we do and how we break down these matchups like nobody else does. If there's any time that we've helped you out along the way, if we've entertained you, we want to hear about that stuff. And on Facebook and on Twitter is great. We appreciate that. But on iTunes, if you can rate and review the show.
It's permanent there.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be fantastic. So maybe, I don't know. Maybe we'll offer an incentive up at some point.
I think we should give people McChickens.
Or I will sacrifice a live chicken live on the air.
Out of happiness?
Like Pedro Serrano in Major League.
Ooh, yeah.
You know, looking to sacrifice a live chicken. So what they do, they brought him a big bucket of fried chicken.
That's right.
Someday maybe I will give you a big bucket of fried chicken. Everybody loves fried chicken, right?
I love me some KFC.
Nobody's going to complain about fried chicken, right?
I get down on KFC right now. You have it, original, please.
Someday, Brian, we'll be able to afford that. You know. But these are 3 of fantasy's toughest questions. The pop quiz segment, everybody's favorite, yours included, Brian. No preparation whatsoever as to what I'm about to ask you. We just ask, and we let Brian show us all how brilliant his fantasy mind truly is. And we begin with question number 1, if you are ready, sir.
I am ready.
You're a bubble team. Win and you're in this week. You have a slight lead on your opponent heading into Monday night's game, in which you have the Jets defense and special teams plugged into your starting lineup. Are you okay with a team guaranteeing their spot in the fantasy playoffs by pulling a starter and taking a 0?
No, I am not okay with that. That is not friendly competition. That is screwing somebody else out of their spot. And if I ever caught that in my league, you get a penalty. You get a financial penalty if you not have your roster slots filled with active players. But why you gonna hose people over like that?
This is contrary to how you feel about so many issues, Brian. I am very surprised to hear you say this.
Yeah.
Because the answer is absolutely 100% yes. In fantasy football, there are very few things that should be considered completely taboo, like lopsided trades or any kind of collusion between owners, bailing an owner out in a dynasty league, for example, that's in a financial trouble. You shouldn't do things like that. But when it comes to making the playoffs where everybody starts at 0 and has a legitimate shot at the title, this is war. You do whatever you have to, aside from the taboo, to get in, Brian.
Even if there's a financial penalty?
I couldn't care less about that. I'm in the playoffs, guaranteeing it by pulling that defense and special teams out of my starting lineup, taking that 0, and guaranteeing with my slight lead that I will be in the playoffs.
It would be pretty funny.
Just saying, that's not as bad as, like I said, some of these things. And that, this is why I do see a side, and I hate to admit this, I do see a side to folks that like to let a league veto a trade by overwhelming majority.
Yes, mine is like that.
There is something to that. Part of me hates it, though. I'm a guy who thinks the commissioner should be in a position to make that decision for the betterment of the league. You're the commissioner for more than just holding on to the damn money. You're supposed to be making decisions too. But this sort of thing does lend some credence to the fact that the league voting on trades and whether or not they should be allowed or not is actually an okay thing.
Right. So my league is like the Senate. Everybody has an equal say, whether you are
So painful.
You are 1-12 or 12-1. Everybody has an equal say.
No way.
In what happens.
Straight up dictatorship in my leagues.
No. Terrible idea. Terrible idea.
All right, question number 2, since you blew that one big
Whatever.
time. All right, come on. You're the guy who stands in line at Walmart and wants to grab all the Nintendo Classic units.
I did try.
And sell them for a profit.
I did try to buy 12.
Why would you not be okay with any excuse to get into the playoffs?
Because
it's so weird.
My league
I'm surprised.
Is built on honor and integrity.
Oh, you're so full of it. Shut up. All right, you ready for number 2? Because I'm done with that.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Number 2. Your fantasy team sucked this season. You're essentially playing for pride this coming week. Your arch rival is playoff bound, but you notice his team, chock full of Titans playmakers, may be in need of some waiver wire help. You have waiver priority.
Oh, get him.
Do you grab the top free agents in an attempt to screw your nemesis into losing this week?
Absolutely. So to me, that's a fair play because it is about the waiver. It's about what happens. That's a fair play to me. Straight up.
Even in a redraft league, huh?
Yeah.
You're grabbing players even though you have nothing to play for.
To me, that is fair play because that's not breaking a rule. That's not playing with an empty roster spot. And it reminds me of the league episode where, God, I can't remember who did it. He went out and picked up every defense and put them all on waivers. He just cycled them all through and put them all on waivers so the dude couldn't get a defense and he wound up losing.
Let me guess. Ruxin was the one that got screwed.
Yeah. No, he's the one who did it, actually.
Oh, he is?
Yeah, he's the one who went out there and picked everybody up and dropped them all the defenses.
This might be our first ever mention of the league on our show.
It was a cool show.
This is our second. What?
It was a cool show until season 4/5. Then it got away from the fantasy football aspect of it and made it more about the comedy, which in turn made it stupid.
I was a big fan of the show all the way through, essentially. There were only a couple of moments that disappointed me. Other than that, I was a fan of all the characters. Loved the writing of that show. It was amazing.
Once they started focusing on Rafi's adventures into the wild, that's where it just kind of petered out for me.
Well, remember, every year they'd have one episode that was kind of off the mark a bit, like kind of off color, and the Randy episodes, for example, are kind of weird. Those are the ones that I typically will just skip over. Some people, that's their favorite episode of the season.
But they found out he was a good character, and they brought him into the show way more than what it was supposed to be about.
Yeah, I know.
And it got away from it.
Should have been about the original characters, no question about it. The answer to this number 2 question, by the way, going back to the first pop quiz question, is this a lopsided trade? No. Is it collusion? No. All right, fits my criteria. I'm absolutely trying to screw guys that screwed me all season long.
Bam.
Number 3. How many teams should qualify for the fantasy playoffs in an 8-team league, a 10-team league, a 12-team league, a 14-team league, and a 16-team league? Let's start with an 8-team league. How many of those teams in an 8-team league should make the playoffs?
8 teams, I would say 3 out of an 8-team. I wouldn't go half and say 4. I would say 3, top seed gets the bye, 2 and 3 play it out.
In an 8-team league, I like a 6-team playoff.
Whoa.
All rosters are
gross.
Hey, listen, all rosters are loaded with studs, so nobody is really that bad aside from bad luck. 6 playoff teams, 4 of which play in week 1. Winners to face top 2 seeds. Bottom 2 teams play in a toilet bowl game for the number 1 pick.
I didn't realize everybody got a trophy in your league.
That's not the way it is at all. It's an 8-team league. Everybody's got studs top to bottom.
Yeah, I guess, but
so
no.
Bad luck is the only reason why you've won or lost games all season long. There you go. In a 10-team league, how many teams make the playoffs?
In a 10-team, this is tough because half is 5, but I think in a 10-team, you probably have 2 divisions, so I would say 6.
Also a 6-team playoff, my opinion. Yep. Same exact setup, except the 4 bottom teams compete for the toilet bowl and next year's number 1 draft pick. Everybody needs to be involved through the end of the season. So
that I don't agree on. We'll talk about that at the end.
I like to give everybody a chance. In the 12-team league, how many teams?
6.
Yes, absolutely. Bottom 6, fight for toilet bowl. That's my opinion.
No.
14-team league.
I would say in a 14, I have to break my tradition, but is it 2 division or 3 division?
In 14, it'd probably be 2 of 7, right?
So if it's 2 of 7, I would say only 6 still make it.
I say 8. All the teams play in the first round of the playoffs. 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, easy bracket. 6 teams in the toilet bowl playoff. That's what I say. How about a 16-team league?
That would be 8 again for
yes,
me.
Absolutely.
You can't go more than 8 because the bracket just wouldn't work. You would have to move your playoff back to like week 12 and 13.
And because I really like to keep all owners involved through the end of a season, 8 of the 16 teams, the bottom half, fight for that number 1 overall pick, and that is your incentive. And that is why you are incorrect on number 3. So not a good week for you, Brian.
So let's talk about the toilet bowl issue.
We don't have time.
Of course we don't.
We got to go on back to our matchups here shortly.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, we got matchups still to come.
I don't look at scripts or anything. What are we doing?
Brian. We can have time. You know what? If you really want to argue with me about this, the Flea Flicker is going to wrap up this week's show as we do every week. We allow ourselves to talk about things other than fantasy football, stretch out a bit, talk about some other stuff. Some of it getting quite controversial, I might add. So, yes, we still have plenty of the matchups still to break down through the week 13. We also still have that aforementioned Flea Flicker, and you bet we got the bargain bin picks as well. 1 quarterback, 1 running back, and 1 pass catcher from both Brian and myself. And we'll throw them at you here in just a bit on the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. 2 more segments of matchups to break down. Week 13 on 515 Fantasy Football, 1350 AM ESPN Radio in Des Moines, Iowa, our radio home for the show. We're also on iTunes, on Stitcher, and online at ESPNDesMoines.com. Find us on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football, and on Twitter at 515 Fantasy. You want to hit us up individually, that's cool too. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He's at Ike FFB. That's IKEFFB. Brian Eikenberry, you have the first of these matchups.
All right, let's do Buffalo at Oakland. Quarterback Tyrod Taylor's going to get a B-. May have a good matchup, but it's going to be due more to his legs and passing to LaShawn McCoy. I do believe he will have an average day, but he's going to need receiver help. I don't see much going on here. Injuries abound. Sammy Watkins, Percy. Tyrod's going to get it with his legs and passing to Shady, who, by the way, Shady's going to get an A. He has 10 total touchdowns, over 1,000 yards combined. Raiders give up plenty in both departments, so McCoy.
You need sleep.
I do. It's been rough. I need a nanny.
You have a baby at home, so we forgive you.
McCoy, easy. You don't need me to tell you to start him. Sammy Watkins, you heard about that sore foot. I'm not risking it. Who knows what's going to happen?
I think he's done.
Yeah, Percy Harvin, nope. Robert Woods, questionable. I don't even know who's catching passes beyond this anymore.
Yeah, I don't know who else they have, honestly. Is Justin Hunter still on roster there?
Maybe.
He might be the only guy worth
actually.
Somebody's got to catch balls there. Charles Clay, I guess, tight end.
Yeah, he's getting a C. His knee, he didn't practice Wednesday either.
Oh, good grief.
So watch for Friday. Lesson learned, if you don't have LaShawn McCoy, don't start any Bills. On to Oakland side of the ball, quarterback Derek Carr. He's going to get a B+. Probably going to pitch up 250-2, but the Bills are 8th against the pass, but Carr has plenty of weapons to make his day. Running back Latavius Murray is going to get a B-. He hasn't been making much of his chances for yardage, but manages to get goal line work and sneaks in a touchdown here or there. I'm starting to believe in him. Bills surprisingly give up 114 on the ground, so I kind of like Latavius Murray here. Wide receiver Amari Cooper is going to get a B. Good yards, bad touchdowns. Start no matter what. You can't bench your studs. Under 1,000 yards, but averages 1 touchdown in every 3.75 games. Disgusting. Wide receiver Michael Crabtree is going to get the B+. To me, he's the best producing overall wide receiver of the group. You get a lot of bang for your buck. Has an Achilles issue, is questionable, so watch him through Friday. Good yards, 6 touchdowns. Seth Roberts, TD Thief with 5 here. And nearly everyone in the pass-catching arena regardless of position on the roster, has 2 or more touchdowns.
Yeah, they went to Seth Roberts on the 2-point conversion last week. I
Yeah,
noticed. So it
it's
wasn't a
ridiculous.
touchdown. Wasn't a touchdown for a change.
So no tight ends either.
The New York Football Giants at Pittsburgh start with Eli Manning here. In his last 4 games, he's averaged nearly 230 passing yards per game, tossed a total of 12 touchdowns to just 4 INTs, 0 in his last 2. The Steelers have looked pretty good defensively as of late, but their opponents have been Cleveland and an Indy team without Andrew Luck under center. Manning should shine in this spot, even on the road. Rashad Jennings, a C grade. Pittsburgh, they're pretty stout against the run. They've allowed the 8th fewest yards to opposing backs, 4.2 yards per carry, only 10 touchdowns to runners. Jennings out-touched rookie Paul Perkins 17-11 in Week 12, so that backfield is virtually split, benefiting neither. And I'm not starting Paul Perkins either. He's on the bench. Odell Beckham, an A grade. He had a massive day in Week 12 against the terrible Browns. Pittsburgh has allowed roughly half of the receiving touchdowns that the Browns have given up on the season. Beckham is a no-brainer start regardless, and you shouldn't give it half as much thought as I just did. Sterling Shepard, a B grade. When your Super Bowl winning veteran quarterback apologizes to you after a 0-target game like Shepard's Week 12, that's a sign that an overcorrection is likely the following week. I like Shepard plenty anyway in this matchup, but now even more so. And that was a great matchup last week. I was so disappointed.
Really fun.
I told a lot of people to start Shepard, and he just laid an egg. So did Antonio Gates, too. Just bad. Victor Cruz, I'll give a C grade to, I guess. Low ceiling, virtually 0 scoring potential, but I mean, he's a dart throw for those that enjoy heartburn on a Sunday afternoon. Will Tye, a C grade. Yuck. 1 week after 1 week after making me look like a genius, he laid an egg in a very good Week 12 matchup and shouldn't be trusted going forward. Over to the Steelers now. Better news. Ben Roethlisberger, an A grade. Amazing stat from Adam Levitan, who's one of the guys I follow on Twitter. In his last 19 home games, Big Ben has thrown 55 touchdowns. In his last 19 away games, Big Ben has thrown 19 touchdowns.
Interesting.
Home game versus a Giants secondary that ranks 23rd in yards to opposing passers, but only have given up 10 passing touchdowns on the season. I'm taking Ben this week. He's at home. Le'Veon Bell, a B grade. The Giants are a top 5 defense against the run, allowing only 3.5 yards per carry this season, only rushing 9 rushing scores. Bell gets nearly as much production through the air as he does on the ground, so I'm not concerned at all despite what looks like a difficult matchup on paper. You're starting him. Antonio Brown, an A grade. We'll likely see a decent amount of Janoris Jenkins this week, the Giants' top cover corner, who just allowed 131 yards to Terrell Pryor last week, 68 yards in a score to A.J. Green in Week 10. Not worried about fantasy's current number 1 scoring wide receiver. Eli Rogers, a C+. He matches up against Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, which isn't a particularly great matchup for Eli. Kobe Hamilton, going to leave him on the bench. Ladarius Green, I'll give a desperation C to. He's got big play potential, but we haven't seen him do enough to warrant a spot in your starting lineup just yet. Not in my opinion.
Washington at Arizona. Quarterback Kirk Cousins going to get a B. Cards have the second best pass defense, but I don't think Cousins will be affected too much, honestly. They have 4 pass catchers that are all threat, and I think it's too many for the Cards to keep up with, as evidenced by Cousins' 3,500 yards and 20 touchdowns. Rob Kelly is going to get a B-, total dud last week. Now goes up against a defense that yields less than 100 on the ground. Does have 5 total touchdowns recently, but 3 from 1 game, so, you got to look a little bit deeper. Deshaun Jackson's going to get a B. Boomer bust has been a boom lately, so that means a bust is coming. But not this week. Patrick Peterson likely won't follow him into the slot. Garcon will get Peterson, I believe. So I say start Deshaun Jackson. He has a touchdown in each of his last 2 games and has 169 yards combined over both of those. Pierre Garcon, going to get a B-, likely getting Peterson, not liking his chances. This week does have 12.2 yards per catch, but only has 2 touchdowns. Jamison Crowder, on the other hand, is going to get a B. Actually has the most touchdowns of the receiving core and has the most yardage, believe it or not. But you do need to believe it because I looked it up. Oh, and he also has the most receptions. Did you change your mind on Crowder now? I like the guy. If he's out there on the waiver wire, grab him. Tight end Jordan Reed, God, just you want to go shoulder. You think he can play, but you just got to follow that one all the way through. I don't think he's going to go.
Would not be wise.
Yeah, would not be wise. Onto the Cards side of the ball, quarterback Carson Palmer is going to get a B+. And Mr. Turnover himself, every single game I give him a decent grade. He burns me over and over and over again. So what do? Touch the fire again, make sure it's still hot.
Keep starting them.
Yeah. The Redskins are giving up 250 through the air with the middle-of-the-road pass defense. He should be able to produce, as the Skins will have to stack the box against running back David Johnson, who's going to get an A, best player on the team, best player in fantasy football right now, I think. Pro tip, start him. Wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald's going to get a B. Dipped in targets the last 2 weeks. He only has 11 targets combined over those last 2 weeks. When the 2 weeks prior to that, he had 29 combined targets. Not sure what this is about. Could be bad play calling. Could be the defenses. Could be whatever. But Josh Norman does not travel to the area of the field where Larry Fitzgerald plays. So I think Fitz gets his increase in targets up again around the 10-11 mark. So that leaves Michael Floyd with a C+. Sorry, bud. He's going to get Norman for most of the game just because he plays on the outside. And for a guy of Floyd's caliber, that means he is not going to catch a ball. He did have a spike in production the last 2 weeks, but that's all going to be shutting down this game. Wide receiver J.J. Nelson, C-, never lived up to the hype, 230 yards to speak of in all his games. And tight end Gresham, he's going to get a D.
I think Gresham's actually a decent plug-and-play
so?
this week. Again, we're dealing with a lot of tight end injuries this week, and then two of the better ones, especially Delaney Walker, but then Gary Barnidge as well, are on bye this week. So, I mean, if you're nervous about Gronk, if you have Jordan Reed and you don't think he's going to play.
Gresham has 2 touchdowns through his 11 games, so it is a plug and pray.
I will take Gresham this week over Vernon Davis.
I would do that too, just because.
Vernon Davis, you would think, is in line for a pretty big workload with Jordan Reed.
It's not going to be.
But he's facing Arizona, and Arizona, I know you have some optimism for Kirk Cousins in that passing game this week. The only reason Kirk Cousins has a chance to succeed this week at all is because he's been pretty good about spreading the ball around to about 8 or 9 different targets, okay? Yeah. If it were not for the fact that he had 8 or 9 guys to throw to on any given play, he'd be in huge trouble. That Arizona defense is a monster. They kill opposing quarterbacks.
But they're 4-6-1.
I know, but that's because,
So here's the trick to these stats.
What is the trick?
They're great at defense, all that stuff, but when your quarterback turns the ball over in your own territory, the opposing team now has 30 yards to go for a touchdown.
Well, if you want to talk about Carson Palmer, he puts the team in a terrible position a lot. I mean, he's had an awful season compared to last year where he was like a top 3 guy. This year, he's throwing picks in horrible places, and they're easily returnable because nobody can catch the guy who intercepted the pass.
What do you think Romo in a Cardinals uniform would do?
Oh, I think that'd be really cool.
That'd be cool, huh?
That'd be fun, yeah. There's a couple of teams I think Romo would fit in really nice. And I think, I hadn't even thought of Arizona. But, with Carson Palmer's advancing age, and, I guess, where else could he go, really? Where else would Romo go? We've talked about this.
Browns.
Yeah, that's not interesting at all.
No, it's not interesting, but they're probably going to write a check.
They've got some weapons. If I'm Tony Romo, I'm probably thinking, hey, here's my chance to turn this sad sack franchise around.
Yeah.
We have one more segment of matchups still to come, including the Sunday night and the Monday nighter. Got that flea flicker, the bargain bins all set to go as well. Boy, what haven't we covered in this week 13 episode, Brian?
Doritos.
Oh, man, we should talk about that in the flea flicker then, huh?
No.
We got to get our argument out of the way, though, first. All right.
I've got business to attend to
all still to come. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. You are listening to the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio Des Moines, Iowa, or on iTunes, or on Stitcher, or online at espndesmoines.com. No matter how you found us, we do appreciate it. I'm Andy Hall. That's Brian Eichenberry. This is a very important week, week 13, and I've got one more set of matchups we've broken down for you, beginning with Tampa Bay and San Diego. First, the Bucks. Jameis Winston, a B+. The Chargers been mostly bad all season long against the pass. With key injuries to members of the team's secondary early on, it became crystal clear that San Diego was a team that could be passed on quite easily. But ever since they signed stud rookie Joey Bosa, opposing passers have been disrupted like they hadn't been before. Now a quarterback needs to be agile and fleet of foot to avoid that rush and get the ball to his receivers. Luckily, Winston is both. Not worried about him this week at all. He's tossed multiple touchdowns in 5 of his last 6 starts. Doug Martin, a B+. It's confounding. If you simply go by the numbers to forecast the success of the Bucs running game this week, the Chargers rank 6th in yards allowed this season on the ground, an average of only 3.9 yards per carry, roughly 90 yards per game. But they've also allowed the second most rushing scores this year, with 15 opposing backs hitting pay dirt. Martin should pile up the combo yards here and have a great chance of scoring at least once. I've heard reports that Jacquizz Rodgers is back at practice this week. I'm not putting him out on the field. I'm benching him until I can see it. Mike Evans, an A grade. What can be said about this guy that hasn't already been said? How about this? Mike Evans has a chance. It's an outside chance, but it's a chance to reach 200 targets this season.
That's incredible.
Wow. Adam Humphries, a C+. Since week 3, he scored and or top 60 receiving yards just once. The Chargers have shown weakness against speedy slot types like him, so I think he's at least worthy of a look at the flex spot in PPR leagues. Russell Shepard, Cecil Shorts, those are guys are leaving on the bench this week. Cameron Brate, a B grade. Top 10 play at the tight end position this week, in my opinion, against a Chargers defense that gives up a fair amount of production to the position, including 3 scores on the season. When they get down in that red zone, Jameis Winston likes to look for Cameron Brate. Over to the Chargers, Phillip Rivers, an A grade. Tampa, like San Diego, are exploitable via the air, but unlike the Chargers, the Bucs have virtually no pass rush. Rivers should have plenty of time in the pocket to pick apart a below-average Bucs secondary that has given up an average of 253 passing yards per game, a total of 20 passing touchdowns this season, only 9 INTs. Melvin Gordon, a B+. Like Martin, he's a combo guy, gets a ton of touches both as a runner and a pass receiver. And against these Bucs, the sledding's gotten much easier over the past month as the defensive front has weakened considerably. Tyrell Williams is questioned with a shoulder injury. I don't know if he's going to play this week, Brian. If he does, I'll give him a B grade. I mean, he's been fantastic. He's been lights out in this Chargers offense. A definite number 1 receiver, but I don't know if I can trust him if he's hurt. Dontrell Inman, a B grade, especially if Williams can't go this Sunday. Inman is your best bet against among the Chargers wide receivers, trending up in targets and fantasy production. Travis Benjamin, a C+, another week healthier, should be considered as a decent flex play this week with a decent ceiling. Antonio Gates, C+, 0 targets last week in a good matchup. I have a feeling that issue will be corrected this week against a Bucs D that is mediocre at best against opposing tight ends. Hunter Henry, a C grade, desperation flex only. He splits snaps and touches with Gates, who's on a mission from God.
From God. I literally just watched the Blues Brothers the other day.
I love that movie.
So do I. Panthers Seahawks quarterback Cam Newton's going to get a B+. Cam's a little bit of a letdown, to say the least. He has 18 total touchdowns, but I think this Seattle defense is not what it seems. I had a little tough matchup here. I was kind of going off of what I thought they were, and then once I started to dig back into the matchup, I realized these aren't the teams that they used to be, and it was total adjustment. So I like Cam's chances here. A lot of leg work, I think, is where a lot of his production is going to come from. Running back Jonathan Stewart's going to get a B. Jay Stu, nail in the goal line grabs. He only has 460 yards, but 7 touchdowns in his 8 games played thus far. Wide receiver Kelvin Benjamin's going to get a B-. The guy's been a little bit of trick as he goes in streaks. Few games up, then a stinker, 2 back and forth. Shoulder limited him in practice, 700 yards, 5 touchdowns. And he goes up a pretty tough matchup in Seattle. Ted Ginn Jr. is going to get a C. Can't touch any of these receivers after Benjamin. They were a little sketchy before in spot starts. Average pass defense for the Seahawks, so I wouldn't push it quite yet with Ginn. Funchess, though, I think Funchess, he flies under that radar. He's going to get a B. He's going to pick up a couple of balls. He's going to pick up a couple of grabs, hiding on the slot. Just a hunch, though. No evidence backing this up. Just kind of how I feel about the matchup. Tight end Greg Olsen, he is going to get an A. You can't count him out. 790 and 3 touchdowns. One thing to note, the tight end touchdowns have been down across the board for tight ends, so I don't get too bent out of shape when I see a tight end with low touchdowns because all of them are low this year.
Very tough to predict this season, tight ends.
Absolutely. On the Seahawks side of the ball, quarterback Russell Wilson's going to get an A. Big game here at home, fighting a protected division and against the 29th worst pass defense. Russell Wilson has a 64% completion, but isn't killing it in the touchdown area as he only has 12 total. I think he bumps that up huge this week. Thomas Rawls is going to get a B-. The reason I think Russell Wilson has a great time passing it because they're going to have such a hard time running it. Panthers still rule the roost. They give up less than 80 per game on the ground. I don't like Rawls here at all. Doug Baldwin's going to get a B+, obviously, because it's a bad pass defense. They're going to be throwing it a lot. I could see Baldwin having another one of those multiple touchdown games here.
Absolutely.
Going to be forced to throw it. He's always shines in those high-volume games. So this could be the time where you want to start Baldwin just on volume alone. Jermaine Kearse is going to get a B, same situation. He is the number 2. Lockett's going to get a C. He may be a sneak-in score here, but I'm not betting my playoff shot on Tyler Lockett at all. Jimmy Graham is going to get a B. Tight end play here as well. I think he could be the leading receiver when the night is over, but I guarantee he is the number 2 receiver on the Seahawks after this day is over.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that at all. The Monday Nighter, Indianapolis, New York Jets. First, the Colts. Andrew Luck in A grade. It's a pretty easy matchup for me to decipher. I think the Jets are awesome against the run, god-awful against the pass. Luck will be throwing plenty, will have great success. He's an A grade. I got to bring back Borat, right?
Love it.
Such a fan of that. Frank Gore, a C grade, facing the Jets' 4th ranked run D that only allows 3.6 yards per carry. They've given up only 6 rushing scores all season long. He may be immortal, but I don't see the Highlander succeeding here. T.Y. Hilton, an A grade, injured is back on Thanksgiving night, but according to head coach Chuck Pagano, not to mention Hilton himself, he should be ready for action again come Monday night. And that's a fortunate thing because this is an excellent matchup as he'll be lined up against slot corner Buster Screen, who is terrible, and he has a great chance to score his first ever touchdown against the Jets. Dante Moncrief, a B+. It's not just opposing number 1s that have had success against the Jets. Number 2s like Moncrief also have had big days against this once proud secondary that is now a shell of its former self. All my Jets friends that are listening to the show right now are cringing, and I'm so sorry, but this is how it is.
Sorry.
If you need more on Moncrief, look no further than the last time these teams met in September of last year. Moncrief caught 7 passes for 122 yards and a touchdown. So, yeah, I like him plenty. Dwayne Allen, a C grade. If there is one bright spot for the Jets besides run stopping, it's slowing down opposing tight ends. Allen and Jack Doyle are below average options this week. I'll take Allen slightly over Doyle because ever since Allen came back from injury, they seem to favor him on the field more for some weird reason. Now for the Jets. Ryan Fitzpatrick, a B grade, had a halfway decent outing in September of last year against these Colts, throwing for 244 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Of course, those Colts weren't historically bad against the pass like these Colts are. I will get more in depth with Fitzpatrick's chances coming up here in a bit. Matt Forte, a B+. The Colts also suck against the run, allowing opposing backs 4.6 yards per carry, over 116 rushing yards per game to the position. They've also given up 8 touchdowns to opposing runners as well. Forte joining the 1,000-yard club after, I think, his 39th rushing yard this Monday night. If he gets over 39, I think that's over 1,000 for the season. And I want to say that's 8 or 9 straight for him, which is pretty awesome. Bilal Powell, a C-grade PPR flex play, considering he's seeing nearly as many snaps as Forte these days. Ceiling is lower due to lack of touchdown opportunity, but he could be a solid yardage play, especially in the short passing game. Brandon Marshall, an A grade. In 3 matchups against these Colts dating back to 2009, as a member of the Broncos, the Bears, and the Jets, he's gone 21 for 202, 9 for 119 and 1, and 7 for 101 and 1. He's pretty much owned the Colts. So I'm taking him with an easy A grade here. Quincy Enunwa, I'll give a B-2 after Forte and Marshall get theirs. Enunwa is left with the table scraps, which at this feast could be fulfilling. I consider him a flex play with a little bit of risk. The other wide receiver there is Robbie Anderson. Don't trust him enough to let him anywhere near my starting lineup, and there's no tight end with that Jets team. There never is. Not even your boy Austin Seferian-Jenkins, Brian.
Whoops.
Yeah, I told you. I told you.
You told me.
Just need to listen once in a while.
Doubt it.
Yeah. We have one segment remaining now that we've broken down all the matchups. We've given you all the intel we've got. Some of you might be in a tough spot this week with bye weeks, injuries, whatever. If you need a quarterback, if you need a running back, if you need a pass catcher, Brian and I have one of each of those positions that chances are available right now on your waiver wire. Go grab them, plug them into your lineup, and expect a decent amount of fantasy production from. You will get your bargain bin picks, and we will wrap up with the 515 flea flicker as well. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM, ESPN Radio. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM, ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. We're also on iTunes, on Stitcher, online at espndemoines.com, where you can listen anytime from anywhere. We are also on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football. Invite you to like the page. Invite you to also follow us on Twitter, at 515 Fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He's at Ike FFB. That's IKEFFB. Our guarantee to you, as always, is if you take the time to reach out to us, whether that's to let us know you like the show, you listen. If you're looking for some advice, throw us your lineup and we'll pick it apart, tell you what you're doing wrong. If you're just looking for any kind of advice whatsoever, we're there for you all the time, and we will never ignore you, as a lot of fantasy quote-unquote experts do. And that's one thing that has always annoyed me is you just can't get through to most of those guys.
No, and that is the frustrating thing. We like doing it. We take pride in it. Sometimes we get into little spats on Twitter, too, between me and Andy.
Oh, yeah.
When I see a call being made, and I'm like, no, it's time to assert myself here as the dominant male on the show.
We're not quite to the flea flicker yet, Brian. We'll have plenty of time to fight.
Perfect.
Those are fighting words right there, by the way. We'll start with the bargain bin, this final segment of the show. This is if you're in desperation mode, you need a quarterback, you need a running back, or you need a pass catcher. Brian and I both have come up with our lists for this week 13, and we'll begin with Brian's quarterback in the bargain bin.
Yeah, hey, if you're one of those Tyrod Taylor owners and realizing it's not working out anymore, you might want to look at quarterback Alex Smith, who I gave a B to in the first matchup. He's got a good boost going against the Falcons, who just got even worser. Worser?
Desmond Trufant's out for the season. So
Brian Eichenberry could throw a touchdown pass against them right now.
Probably not.
Maybe not.
Call me crazy, but I really like Ryan Fitzpatrick this week.
You are crazy.
Against a team that is arguably the worst in the league against the pass. The Colts have given up the 5th most passing yards, 279 per game, the 4th most passing touchdowns, 22 total on the season, and have only collected 3 INTs all year long. They've allowed multiple touchdowns via the air in 8 straight. They're banged up. They possess virtually no pass rush up front, and Brandon Marshall, Quincy Enunwa, Matt Forte, and Bilal Powell will be enough to make Fitz worth a look as your starting quarterback this week. Who's your running back, Brian?
My running back, the one and only Kenneth Dixon, as I mentioned earlier.
Well, now you stole my bargain bin at the running back. Damn
All right,
it.
well, let's combine these here because,
Go ahead.
Like I said, he had the 13 carries last week. He had 4 targets and 4 catches. So the fact that he is increasing his snaps, he's increasing his carries, he's increasing his targets, make him juicy.
Do you know at what rate he outsnapped Terrence West last week?
72-1.
No. 31-23. He outtouched him 17-16, which is noteworthy. Neither back stood out from the other in terms of yards per carry or yards per catch, but I know for a fact that the Ravens want to see what they've got in this rookie. This is an excellent week to take the training wheels off, take him for a spin against a Miami defense that has given up the 3rd most yards to opposing backs, over 132 per game, and a total of 8 rushing scores on the season. The Dolphins have improved dramatically in the secondary over the past month, but remain a bottom feeder against the run. Who's your pass catcher?
My pass catcher is wide receiver Taylor Gabriel of the Atlanta Falcons. You know what? He's going to be sneaky here. I really think he had it together. He was popping up on the radar. And with them playing Kansas City, hey, yardage equals points on your roster. I will gladly take 100 yards out of a receiver than 40 and a touchdown any day of the week.
My pass catcher is Marquise Wilson of the Chicago Bears. Going to go back to a conversation I remember us having several weeks ago, Brian. I'm not sure exactly when it was or who we were discussing at the time, but you made an astute observation that a reason one backup receiver may excel over another when a starting quarterback goes down and is replaced is because the two have worked together exclusively for months, whether it be practice squad or second or third string units. A guy like Matt Barkley and a guy like Marquise Wilson already have a chemistry. It's obvious.
Absolutely.
It's obvious from watching last week, right? So because of injuries to Jay Cutler and Brian Hoyer, a suspension to Alshon Jeffrey. Wilson is pretty much now the de facto number one pass catcher in that Bears offense, who, by the way, will see the Niners' disaster of a defense this weekend.
Yeah, jackpot.
11 targets last week with Barkley under center, 8 receptions for 125 yards and a touchdown, and it could have been even bigger than that, but he dropped some passes. So if he can just straighten that out, man, this could be a monster game for Mr. Marquise Wilson. Those are your bargain bin picks for the week. Brian and I wish you the best of luck, no matter who you're deciding to start. If you still need some help, like I said, you can find us on Facebook. You can hit us on Twitter. You can find us on the SleeperBot app Sunday mornings. We're doing starts and sits. So
You can usually find me in the food court at the mall, too.
yeah, I do like that food court.
Oh, famous teriyaki, dude. I get down on it.
I like Chinese food.
Beef and shrimp.
Now, what else do you want to talk about? It's the 515,
right.
the fantasy flea flicker, as
All
we
right,
always wrap
so
up the show.
Let's talk about your toilet bowl thing here.
Yeah, okay.
I don't like it. So the way it works in my...
By the way, I'm offended that you think I'm a participation trophy guy.
Yeah. No, that's not how it works. You have the worst record in the league. You get the first pick. I'm not playing it through. Here's what happens.
I don't hand anybody anything.
So
I am not a participation trophy guy.
If you haven't figured it out, in my leagues, I do a lot of preventative measures. So
You're the Iron Fist.
Yeah, with the Iron Fist. So on Monday, what's going to happen is anybody who is 7 through 12, I lock their rosters. They're not allowed to add, drop, do anything.
Once the playoffs start.
Well, once Monday starts, because I don't even want you to drop somebody on Monday. You can't add anybody because of waivers, but you can drop somebody. So I prevent that from somebody from, oh, hey, man, drop this person and I'll snag them up because I got the top waiver pick. So I lock all the roster spots. So I get the money collection going. I get all this stuff out of the way early and often, and I lock everybody out. I prevent tomfoolery in my league.
So all the playoff-bound teams, it's okay. They can still do their transactions as usual, but not anybody else.
Nope.
If you're out, you're out.
You're out, you're out.
I don't disagree with that. I'm not going to fight you on that.
You dang right you're not.
But what I will fight you on is for an incentive like a number one pick, as opposed to cash or a trophy or whatever it is you play for in your league, it doesn't matter really. The one thing you never really want to be is that bottom team, because there's usually some sort of penalty other than your team sucked and
like
everybody
someone
made fun
naming
of you.
your team for you.
Like somebody naming your team, which happened to me in your league, and it wasn't even my fault. It was first team for
You're
my
Rob.
first year. Oh yeah, it's my first year in the league. It's not even my doing, but hey, I'm borderline.
You're a good sport about it.
Borderline playoffs this year. Turned that franchise right around, didn't I? Yeah, give me a little time. I'll be collecting on you guys for sure. But yeah, as far as the bottom feeder goes, all right. So I like to make teams earn something like a number one pick. If you're gonna, I don't just like handing anything to anybody, because that guy could have just quit for the final however many weeks of the season.
But not in mine, you can't, because that costs you a lot of money if you just quit.
What I mean by that is that they can put in a subpar lineup they know is not going to beat anybody. Teams can do that.
There's financial penalties for that.
So what I'm saying is you allow as many teams as necessary to stay alive and keep playing, even though they're not in the playoffs. They can be in what I like to call the toilet bowl playoffs, which eventually will lead to a number one draft pick next year's draft. And whether that's, if you're in a 12-team league, which is pretty standard for most leagues, I think 6 teams, the top 6 make the playoffs, right?
Yes.
In 12-team leagues. So top 6. So that leaves a bottom 6, basically. I like to let those bottom 6 fight it out for the toilet bowl. Even the number 7 team in the league, and they might have just lost out on a tiebreaker or something. Sure, they might have the strongest roster out of everybody, but who's to say they make all the right decisions? Late in the season, things happen. Let's be honest. If the Dallas Cowboys wrap things up in the NFC East and that number 1 seed in the NFC, are you really going to tell me that they're going to play Ezekiel Elliott 100%
No,
in those
and that's
weeks?
what worries me. I need them to lose quick.
This is my point exactly. Decisions have to be made in those playoff weeks. Nothing is a given.
Well, this is why you don't go to week 17.
Okay, that's a whole other conversation we can have. But for now, my argument was just made in terms of letting more teams get involved in a playoff to keep them interested and playing for something like a number 1 pick in next year's draft, where nothing's guaranteed, just like the other playoffs, the championship playoffs. You have to make the right decisions, and you have to be very savvy late in the season, because NFL teams, they make very odd decisions, So I think I made my point here.
How
We can argue out the other thing some other time, I think.
much time we got left?
A little bit. So
Do you have a topic?
yeah, about a minute. I like the Doritos thing. You want to talk about Doritos? Or do you want to talk about potato chips in general and some of the really like cool flavor combinations they've come out with recently?
I think we already did this, like the tikka masala and stuff like that.
Yeah,
the
you
Indian
talked
food.
about that, but I
love
didn't
them.
get around to talking about like, fried chicken and waffles or whatever.
I hate that one.
That's a flavor on a chip
terrible.
now. It's amazing.
Terrible. No.
And it's really not that bad tasting either.
I like dips. I think dips are very overlooked. There's the bacon and French onion. Bacon. I'm really into dips right now.
No.
Especially on pretzels. And I like butter braid pretzels.
On pretzels. Here, okay, you want to know what's really good with pretzels? Hummus.
Well, yeah, I like hummus.
Sabra hummus. I get the supremely spicy hummus.
No.
Oh, it's so good.
I get the roasted pine nut.
We got to go.
Bye.
Good luck to everybody. Thanks for listening. For Brian Eikenberry, I'm Andy Hall. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show.